For my money, the bitterest flavor of disappointment is when, on paper, an idea or a premise is so good it gets you excited, but then the execution doesn't live up to the promise. Enter the movie I watched last night called Never Blink. The movie doesn't waste any time telling you what it's all about. It starts with this presentation with this lead scientist at a clinic that's studying what happens to the brain when we blink involuntarily. He spews out a bunch of statistics like the average length of a blink, how many times the average person will blink in a day, and then what amount of time we spend with our eyes closed. It was something like 30 minutes a day or something like that. But the visual cortex is still active, and not only that, but the brain stitches together the images before the blink and after the blink to make a seamless image to where you don't even notice you've blinked. Already I was like, I don't know if anything you just said is true, but it's enough science for me to be into it. He said it confidently enough to where I was like, okay, I'll bite. That's fine. We'll take this as truth. The idea is that during the blink, this one portion of our mind that does the visual stitching is open to, since the visual cortex is still running, it's open to perceiving a different dimension than the one you're in. Again, it's nonsense, but it is solid enough and in line with enough other things I've watched to where I was like, yeah, this is a fine premise for a film. It's about these 5 young scientists in this clinic or institute or whatever it is who are running the studies on trying to capture what it is that the visual cortex captures during the blink. Immediately, movies like Flatliners and The Lazarus Effect came to mind. The conceit of those movies is that once you experience this other plane that humans aren't supposed to experience and then return from, something comes back with you. A better example would actually be From Beyond, the H.P. Lovecraft story, but for this audience, more the movie with Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton. They stimulate the pineal gland to where they can suddenly perceive all these other things around them, these creatures. But it's like a bit like Zeno's paradox in a way. If you perceive something, you're altering it. And in From Beyond, once you perceive these things, they perceive you. And that's basically exactly how, in a nutshell, what Never Blink is trying to do. When these scientists find a way, or researchers, whatever, find a way to capture images from this parallel world, I think they call it the in-between in Never Blink, it is exactly like the Upside Down from Stranger Things, just FYI. It's all the same building, like everything that's there in the real world is there in the in-between, but it's got black tendrils and stuff floating around, everything's kind of messed up. Classic parallel pocket universe stuff. So yeah, the premise, solid. Then the movie starts. Basically, everything I just told you, you can get from the trailer or the synopsis or what have you. But then the movie starts proper, and you start to see the acting, and you start to hear the soundtrack, which is a lot of rock guitar with vocals, which is kind of a mistake when you're trying to set a mood, because, you know, rock songs with vocals, rock guitar can set a mood great, but as soon as you add vocals to it, you're splitting the audience's attention between what's happening and what they're kind of, even if they're trying not trying to comprehend the lyrics are shaving off a little bit of that attention that's supposed to be aimed at what's happening in the movie. And the acting is bad. Really bad. The lead, I can't remember her real name, but I think it's Tatjana something. She's not so bad. I think I've seen one of the actors, one of the other actors in something else before, but the lead is kind of a B-movie scream queen. She's been in several things in the last couple years. And she did a good job with what she was presented with. Also, even in the real world, it had that kind of grayish tint that low-budget movies always seem to have for some reason. Really washed out. Just very much an amateur, low-budget production. Maybe not amateur, maybe amateur is a little bit harsh, but certainly a low-budget production. But where the movie really let itself down the most is in its villain. We'll be getting into a few spoilers, stuff that you might not know from the trailers or the synopsis, but honestly, watching the trailer, I'm pretty sure everything I'm gonna say does appear there, so don't worry too much about spoilers. Going back to the Stranger Things analog, the enemy is just one. There's not like a whole ecosystem in the in-between. It's just one guy who doesn't appear to have any motivations except to come into this world to kill people. Now I can be, as far as cosmic horror goes, I do actually enjoy when a villain or a monster or an entity or just a presence is there, and it's scary that it's there, and it doesn't really need to be explained any further than that. But once you start giving your entity a physical form that's humanoid and speaks perfect English, you gotta give us a little more than just, ooh, I'm bad. Now, these are all views and opinions I have after watching the movie, but during the movie, there were some bits where I didn't stop watching it, right? I finished the movie, which is perhaps the lowest bar there is to clear, but it's still a bar that some movies have not cleared, for me at least. It was the third act where everything really went wrong. And the action was, the climax. Oof, it was just bad. A movie like this doesn't need a physical presence and a malevolent voice bad guy. This needs to be something like, this should have been a psychological horror, if you ask me. This should have been very little shown to the audience, because we're already dealing with something that is involuntary. Blinking. An involuntary thing. It's like how Nightmare on Elm Street made people afraid of sleep. This movie, if done at least differently, maybe not right, but differently, it could have been something that makes you afraid to blink, or at least you think about it every once in a while. Doctor Who made the Weeping Angels, right? Terrifying. The Weeping Angels were terrifying. Granted, a little bit more of a physical presence, not a psychological one, but the first Weeping Angel episode was called Don't Blink. It really could have been something. It had such an interesting, promising premise. And even though, in the beginning of the movie, where it was grayscale and the acting was pretty bad, but the guy was up there on the stage talking about, giving all these facts about blinking, which, whether they were true or not, I didn't know, I didn't care. It was compelling, and immediately evoking those movies like Flatliners and The Lazarus Project, the Lazarus Effect. Lazarus Project is a really weird drama about, they tell a death row inmate that he's being killed, but then all they do is put him to sleep and he wakes up on like a idyllic farm to see if, what was the point of that movie? I'm pretty sure I clicked it because I thought it was gonna be a horror movie. Usually anything with the word Lazarus in the title is, but it was some story about like redemption or something. Anyway, like I said, it was the bitterest flavor of disappointment. Though, if you've been around for a while, whenever I don't like something, I always talk about what I don't like first, but then I talk about the things that were basically fine. Aside from the music, the sound mix was pretty good. Most of the time, if you've got a movie that looks this bad and has acting this bad, not that it don't looks really bad, but you know, the grayscale, the bit where it's like, okay, clearly amateur production. Typically, the sound effects and the sound mix go along for the ride. It's like similar quality, but the sound mix was actually pretty good. When I realize that I am watching something low budget, my priorities change a little bit. Like, I'm not looking to have my mind blown. I'm actually looking to find good things about it because I like all horror. I watch basically everything. But if you go into watching straight to VOD release, never blink that you did going to watch Jordan Peele's latest movie, they're not gonna match. So viewing from the lens of, yes, this is a low budget movie. This is potentially even a micro budget movie. The sound mix was notably good. Also, practical effects only. They didn't pull any of that bad. Now I'm not shit talking Asylum, but Asylum does make micro budget movies that lean on CGI for basically everything, and it's typically not great. Everything, to my knowledge here, was not CGI. It was practical effects. There wasn't a whole lot of gore, really, but near the climax, in the end, when they're in the in-between, there's pretty gross stuff. And unfortunately, with the lighting, it didn't really, I mean, maybe the lighting was dim because it didn't look very good if it was lit a little bit more, but yeah, there was some gross stuff in there, and I think it's a tick in the pro column. And as I said before, the lead, I wish I could remember her whole name, but I'm pretty sure her first name is Tatjana. She was fine. Dialogue, not such great dialogue, but you can tell that she is much better at acting crazy than just having a normal conversation on screen. Thank you to Humanes Rodrigo, Gothicorn Mac, and Annette Silvera for being patrons on my Patreon. If you would like to keep me renting movies and buying games and generally just support what I do, please go to patreon.com/horrorandcats where you can get a whole bunch of stuff. At least one video weekly, voting, access to my personal Discord server. You can either listen to, read, or download and listen to the original horror stories I've written. Those are only on Patreon, nowhere else. Hope to see you there, and until next time when I see you here, I'm Smokey Lyle, this is Horror and Cats. Thanks for watching.